Hello everyone, my name is Gregor Schill and I'm a coach and test driver for the Coach Dave Academy. Today I will guide you around the lab on Bahrain in the beautiful BMW M4 GT3. So, before we always start the flying lap, we want to maximize the last corner from the previous lap. And how do we do it at Bahrain? We try to get the car as much as we can on the left side, late apex, so we can floor the car as early as we can, and then maximize the road on the exit, run wide. And we do that because the more we essentially are able to carry, the more speed we are actually able to carry out of the last corner, the more time we gain already on the first straight, so to say. That's why we do that. And when we arrive then onto the start-finish straight, we try to already aim for our braking marker as early as we can. And in this case, essentially, we brake after the 150 meter board at the tarmac strap on the left. So it's pretty cool that we have like such a perfect reference point, which makes our life for turn 1 really easier. So when we arrive here, we brake here. When the tarmac stripe ends, you brake in a straight line and try to not turn in too early. Why is that? If you turn in too early, you essentially make the entire first hairpin much tighter than it needs to be. And as we want to have a good exit, we definitely don't want to do that. So try to aim for a late corner entry. Then you turn in, cut as much as the track limit allows you here over the apex curb. And then you go on the power. Be careful, don't run too wide. If you exit here with too much, if your exit is in a way that you get carried quite far here out of the corner, you will never ever be able to make turn 2 flat. So that's a pretty nice test for yourself if you can actually compromise, corners to get the following one flat out. So definitely try to not carry too much speed through turn 1, rather sacrifice it so you can open up turn 2 as much as you can and get it flat out. Really important here also, always try to know how much you are essentially allowed to cut. Because if you would just think that you can drive like that here over turn 2, this would make your life a whole lot of more difficult. So what you need to do then in that case is, you can watch of course our Hotlaps to see how much track you can use. Or you can also test by yourself and see, for example, if you drive like that over the curb, it will be easily fine. And also here on the exit, try to be careful, because if you cut here too much, it can also give you a penalty. But just like that, that will be already a first sector. And I know from my own experience when I learned it in the GT3 cars, it's pretty tough to nail. So just to help you a bit more out, we will have a look again in Delta. So you see here really well, straight line braking as long as we can. Use the ABS also here slightly to help the car essentially slow down even more. And as soon as we start our major turn-in process, that's where we start to reduce the brake pressure, and then as we hit the apex, we can go onto the power. And because of our late turn in, we are essentially not running wide on the exit of turn 1, which helps us to get turn 2 easily flat, and then turn 3 is just a consequence. And you'll see it really well here in the driving data, how the trail braking essentially amplifies the rotation on the entry, right? If we wouldn't do that, if we would just lift and coast into the corner, we would never ever be able to get this rotation done in time to make the car basically positioned right and be able to go onto the power at the apex. So definitely watch out when you compare your lap against this one for the trail braking phase. As we approach now this next right-hander, we aim again for the tarmac stripe on the left, and afterwards, when we are just about before the 100 meter board, that's when we start to brake in a straight line. Be confident with the ABS, you can really push it here. And then trail brake into the first apex. Use the banking of the road, because it helps you to bring the car into the inside. So if you do a too late entry here, you will never be able to get the car into this position, because you need the banking early on already to get the car to that stage. So when you basically arrive then like that at the apex and you go on the power, you can be really aggressive. But it's important that you open up the steering as early as you can so you can get the power essentially down. It doesn't matter if you are full throttle, if the TC cuts everything out, you won't accelerate. You can maximize the track here on the exit. It's not as harsh as with the hypercars. But now, one of the most difficult sections, in my opinion, the S's with the hairpin. So, how do we approach them? First of all, you try to cut as much here on the entry as you can, because this will open up the entire section massively. Then what you try to do is, you cut here with the inside tires as much as you can, so you can just straight line the entire S a bit more. And the same applies here. If you get the first S right, this next one is flat out, but also only if you're able to cut here as much as you can. You run here wide, but don't think that you're done now. You already need to think about the next corner. So you start to bring the car as much as you can over to the left side. After the Goodyear sign, just when we're about to arrive at the left curb, that's when we start to brake. Hard into the pedal. Trail brake till the apex, and then as we reach here, the apex, onto the power aggressively. And be careful to not run too wide like that, because this will just activate the TC as you saw, and you'll lose a chunk of time. And just to essentially help you guys understand the principle here in that section, we will have a look again into delta. So you see here, not even 100% braking. Why? You always need to ask yourself, do I need to brake as hard as possible? And in order, maybe just as a tip or a device, watch your entry and exit speed. If the difference isn't that big, it could indicate that you don't need to brake as hard as you can, right? So always try to essentially think dynamically about the braking point, right? So you don't need to basically apply the same pattern how you brake in every single corner. Every corner is unique, so definitely have that in mind, and you see that here exactly. And then a bit of throttle modulation here just to get the power down. A small lift here just to be safe with track limits. If you get the perfect slide, so to say, this will be even flat. And then here for the braking for the hairpin, you see the driver goes really confident into the brakes, but because we also have this downhill section, we don't want to trigger the ABS too much. So just to get still the rotation done, this is why we don't brake here as hard as, for example, as for turn 1. Then you see here the trail braking phase really nicely and then aggressively on the power, as we are able to open up the steering wheel nicely, as you see here. Now, one of the most iconic, or the most iconic corner almost even at Bahrain, which is pretty tough to hit. It's the double left-hander, and how do we drive that in the GT3 car? So, if you don't have a reference point in this corner, it will be horrible, because you'll just get it once, maybe right, then you will be a bit too early or too late the next time. So, in order to master this section, you need to essentially aim for the first apex here from the first left, and then as soon as you reach the first apex, you start to brake. You brake, 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 let yourself here carry over to the outside, and then you start to turn in. Trail brake into the apex, cut a lot as much as you can, and then bam on the power and exit. You might think, well, this car has ABS, I can just slam the brake and essentially get away with it, but no, in this case not. Why? ABS of course helps you to not lock up, but on the other hand, if you want too much from the tire at the same time, it will just basically understeer you off. So just to help you on how you should, just to help you, we will have again a look into delta. Double left-hander section, you see pretty well. We don't even slam the brake here. And it's exactly because of the reason what I've told you. So you don't want to trigger the ABS too much, as then you would have no braking power and just would understeer out of the corner. So this is why it's important to have this feeling how much you are essentially allowed to brake before the ABS actually intervenes too much. And you can get this essentially by practicing and trying to mimic those inputs from us drivers at the Coach Dave Academy. So this is why delta is so powerful. So you can check if you do the same inputs or not. So you see here, really fundamental to not brake really hard or over like 62% into this corner. And if you do that, you will find yourself getting much more turning, and your life will be a lot easier through that section. Now we have again a quick straight, but of course we already try to aim as early as we can for the next braking point. And in this case, you can take on the left side the 50-meter board and then brake around at 70 meters, or you can take on the right side the flag indicator again, which should now turn yellow in any second, exactly. and then you can start to brake essentially at the blue line here just before. That can be your reference point. Also here, really important, get the car here over to the apex, cut as much as you can, run wide on the exit so you can get the power done. And really crucial, don't hesitate, bring the car over to the left here, preferably it should be already here parallel to the white line, and then you turn in, you are flat, try to hug here the apex, cut even aggressively if you need to get the car rotated, and maybe even a small lift just to get the car basically and keep it at the inside. When you run here then wide, you need to watch out to not basically touch here this sand estro, if you want to call it like that. Definitely try to bring the car over to the red and white curb, and then when we pass the Avis sign on the right, that's when we start to brake in a straight line. Don't try to turn in too early because the corner is closing up, so definitely aim for a later apex so you can really floor the car easily on the exit. Now almost done, just the last corner to do, and always be careful here because depending on the lap your tires can already overheat, so don't try to just get 2 temps or so in the last corner, really try to take it the way you practiced already. So how do we do that? We want to brake here just about at the 100 meter board in a straight line as hard as we can, fully into the ABS. As soon as we start to turn in, we reduce the brake, and you can cut here again a lot on the apex. Straight line your steering wheel as much as you can as early on, so you have the best possible exit, and drive over the finish and finish your lap. This was the Hotlap guide around Bahrain in the M4 GT3. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see how a quick lap looks around here, make sure to watch the video until the end. You will see the Hotlap from my teammate Jakob Ostermann. I would say thank you for tuning in and see you in the next one. Bye bye.